I think so.
Okay.
I know Steve Clausen, our community relations manager, and Gary Palmer, our operations manager, were here, I think, in May, was it April, May?
Yeah.
It's at some point in time, to kind of give you an idea of what our plans were for the restoration work on the Point of Rocks.
Could you speak up a little bit more, please?
You bet. I think the last time we were here to let the commissioners know and other organizations and agencies that are affiliated with the Point of Rocks Monument what our reclamation plans were. And this is all part of a broader project for Northwestern Energy to do pole replacement as part of our regulated compliance and reliability standards for the infrastructure along the entire Milwaukee, I think, railroad. And so this particular segment of it being a national monument, the landowner being MDT, we actually started last December working with the Transportation Department, and I know John Axline, their historian, and Carla Haas out of their headquarters were all involved in, first of all, looking at the history and also working with us on access for rebuilding the infrastructure that's out there right now. So this actually is photos from our foreman when they did the work in that area. The frozen ground portions of it, it was nice to see that those native grasses had already come back. However, in the course of construction, things changed. Conditions changed weather-wise for them, and this is the equipment that we had to get into those structure locations to drill and new foundations and put in new poles. And so this kind of just gives you an idea of how much equipment and crew we have to get to those locations, and a little bit of what those guys are challenged with when they have to go out and replace that infrastructure. In doing so, there was a thaw that occurred, and so there was substantial rutting, as you've probably seen photos of on the railroad portion of it, and then the Mullen Road portion of it, which is separate from it and is a foot and pedestrian trail, was utilized to access certain structure locations. And so part of this reclamation work will take care of that. And I'll let Sadie Babcock, is our Northwestern Energy's internal environmental compliance. And so I'll let her describe the plan and the company that's under contract to do that restoration work. Our original intent was to have that done in June. And there were some challenges with the contractor. We did have our internal vegetation crews go out, and the recontouring was more extensive than those crews were equipped, and so we decided to bid that work externally. And so Sadie can give you an update on what that is.
Okay, we have roughly an area, and it's probably a little hard to see on the probably about a half a mile area, and there was 3 areas that were damaged during the pole installation. One was the rutting, which you may have seen some pictures of. The next one was they built a road up to one of the pole locations, and they filled a portion of the Mullen Trail. And then other various, just some erosion problems, some steep slopes that we need to address. So we have contracted with a firm. I wrote the reclamation plan, and it just basically is trying to get the area back to what was there prior. It was pole 6523, and this was a road that they built down to the pole. It's got some steep slopes, some stormwater issues. We're going to go into this site, recontour it, stabilize it, probably use some stabilization blankets, seed it, We want to maintain the access to the pole, but we also need to address the stormwater runoff there. This next structure, this was the section of the Mullen Road that they filled when they made the road up to the pole. Our plan here is to pull back that fill out of the historic Mullen Road, recontour, reseed, and take it back to the original grade that it was. The other stuff is mostly road work, rutting. We're going to grade the Milwaukee Road, just get all of our ruts, put it back smoothly, and then reseed everything, scarify it, and then do some weed control as well along the entire route through here. So that is kind of an overview of what the plan is. There will probably be some additional work we'll do out there if we identify it. There's a couple people that want to be there while we're working, so if there's something they want to see done, we'll get it done then. And I assume it's probably going to be within the next 2 weeks that we'll be out there and start doing this work. We did delay because of fire. The contractors were a little nervous about going out there when it was so dry. We have a local contractor in Superior here that's going to be doing the dirt work for us, so we'll be overseeing that.
Will John Axline be able to be on site?
I think he has requested to be on site, so.
Good, good.
Yep.
Either he or a representative for him, he said.
Yep.
would be.
Okay. We noticed that in the most disturbed area where they borrowed a bunch of material out of the bank to build that ramp across Mullen Road up to the site.
Yeah, that's the.
How is that material going to be redistributed? I mean, is it going to be?
We'll either pull it back up on the top of that road, or we'll haul it out.
Back into the hill, or?
Yeah.
Because you need to keep your access somehow, but
Yeah.
a lot of material got borrowed and moved uphill.
I think I got some,
Yeah, there was kind of a radius that where a bank was undercut to generate that fill that you saw in the picture there. And that can be replaced, but it's going to be difficult to do, to kind of put it back in there and
When you
get
force
it back
it
in
now.
place. And it's sloughing in, it's like yesterday.
Yeah.
And that's where, it was actually our foreman that when they notified our reclamation crews, he said that they would need, as a minimum, an excavator for that portion of it to do that amount of dirt work and to reclaim. And that's
yeah,
what you're
it
looking
goes,
at.
this is, Sean is standing on the road there, and it goes down and around, and that's where you see the fill. And this is where we had thought we could either pull it back up onto the road, or this is looking from the road down onto the Mullen Road.
From the tower.
Yeah, yeah,
Looking down
yep,
and see where the rocks sloughed in there on the right, upper right?
yep,
That's a failure from the cut slope up there.
okay,
That was undercut.
Right, the Mullen Road comes in from this
yep,
direction, and it's overtopped by quite a bit of material. And then this material was borrowed from the bank, and so the tread of the Mullen Road used to kind of go down like this.
Mhm. And that's what, we have the original path. I actually have photographed this multiple times before, during, and after, and then we have these photos from our foreman, and it's always been our intent to put it back.
Mhm.
And in that area, the plan is to put the material, what can be put back from where they took it, but definitely everything that's crossing, the grade will go back to the original on that Mullen Road portion of it. And that particular location, that was solid rock where the pole was. It was originally installed in 1910 and dug with a handhole, but they did have to get a compressor, and you saw they had a drill come out of Spokane, and so for us, we have to build a pad that we can levelize that equipment to do that work process. So that was the reason for the work that occurred at that location. Any more questions, or?
There was one question I had about a site location that I didn't see here. There was a stream crossing that was mucked up really bad, right at the beginning of the trail, I guess.
Yes.
And that isn't shown here. So that's one
I think
place.
I've got pictures of that. There's
It's-
some fills there that we're gonna pull back out of there.
The rutting on that one, and
Yeah,
that's where
that's that.
Sadie and I walked that too. And the suggestion of talking with Axe Lines crews, instead of putting a blade in there to just like push stuff around, because that, like you said, there's a natural wetland on one side of that, and depending on water table, it either runs over or through. And our foreman thought that there was a culvert there that needed to be repaired, but there's not. And so we thought, in order to not cause more disturbance with the reclamation, but to have it disked and do some work there that will just
Level it out.
level it out. Yeah, take the rutting out of it, but not, disturb it more than it is right now. So that's the plan for that location.
That
Would
was
there have been
one
a,
picture where there was some pretty deep rutting. That was in that same area.
It was,
right, and there was kind of peak runoff, it was cutting through the ruts and,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you mentioned within the next 2 weeks is going to be a lot of this reclamation going on?
With this moisture,
Moisture,
we
we're
hope
hoping that
so,
they'll-
yeah, because we had actually, in conversations with the contractor and with the different agencies involved, the Forest Service has also requested oversight of this reclamation because of its relationship to the recreation aspects further, to the west, but because of the fire danger and others, we were thinking October. But with this moisture, it does a lot for us, and our intent is the best chance of success. And so that's what we're trying to hit schedule-wise with the revegetation. So the cooler weather helps too for dry land reclamation and revegetation, so.
So would there be the possibility of setting a particular day during that reclamation process that we could be communicated to? Like, I think we just gave our email addresses and
Yeah,
sure,
when John
sure.
Axline's there and
Yep.
Sadie is
kind of
the
see our
on-
eyes on the actual ground and see what you're doing so we have a better understanding of your challenges as well as what your plans are.
Absolutely, no, I appreciate
Yeah.
that, yeah.
I'm just assuming you'd
Yep.
all be interested in that.
Absolutely. No, we
Yeah.
love that. Sadie will be Northwestern Energy's on-site
Yep.
inspector. And so, we can communicate that with you once we know those specific dates, when they're gonna mobilize to the site and what's a good day for everybody to meet out there. And if you're available, that would be fantastic. So we'd love your participation then.
Or,
Yeah.
I'll be there full time, so if somebody can't make it on a certain day, if they come in and just
Sure.
identify themselves, and we'll get you a hard hat and vest,
Sure.
and, could come out.
Yeah, good point.
Good, good. Thank you.
And then it seems to me, I remember vaguely that there was talk of signage along the Point of Rocks area. And I don't know if there already is some of that.
There is
Some
some
of that.
kiosks there, yeah.
But, just as a thought, an additional sign that talked about the pole replacement and the challenges and how, there were issues that had to be later addressed because of the weather conditions. I would think that would fit into the interpretation of Mullen Road along there. It's just a thought.
No, that's a good thought and a good point, because in our adventure and identifying all the agencies involved, those markers that are out there now along the trail, and there are MDT markers at each terminus, and then there's a few scattered in between with historic information. But the agencies, as a matter of memorial, and those that support it, I think that's a great idea to have that on signage for the trail, that it is, a living monument, because it does talk about the railroad and it does talk about the Mullen Road, but it doesn't talk about the local agents, historic preservation organizations that support that monument. So that's actually a good thought. Is that something Steve would do?
Or historically, I always wondered, because I remember when that railroad went by there and it was all, it was electric railroad, and then when they went bankrupt, Montana Power Company bought a lot of their right-of-way because, it was already open width and right-of-way, and then they also had, the existing, they call them pantograph, that was their electric line dangling between the poles. So I was always curious how, what prompted deviation off of the railroad, like this pole you're talking about, it goes up the hill a little bit and then comes back kind of down to the right of way, and then I guess that's an agreement with DOT, and then the pole wasn't secure enough where it was, so it's up on the hill now, or I don't know, I guess maybe mention historically how the right of way for the power company got acquired. You know, that's a bit of history that I've never really fully understood how that transpired, but.
Well, and that's the fun part of my job, is the history associated with those right-of-ways.
Yeah.
And it becomes an important factor when we have to go back for a rebuild. And on that one, the only thing I can say, because in talking with our engineers, was, you know, how are we going to get back to that location? But the power line itself went in to serve the railroad. So the logic and design was to accommodate their facilities, and even the deed itself reads a lot about that, and even changes that would be required at a future point in time. And when the rail company disbanded, the landowner in that particular location, I think, was quite the historic preservation champion, I guess, and you know, he had reserved this area and the context of the power line and the railroad before they transferred it to the transportation department. So before the interstate went in, he took steps to make sure that there was still that intent and that agreement that at some future point in time, even with the rail disbanding, that the power remained and their ability to make modifications, but make modifications to current. And so I can't explain why exactly some of those poles are located where they are, but walking through even some of the footings and the foundations of structures that were on the Mullen Road, you know, those facilities that were there, and other things that drove some of the, because no, it's not a straight shot.
Yeah.
And some of them that were on the, you know, the rocky faces, that was our initial approach to MDT, was if we could reroute some of those, and always with the intent of not conflicting with the path or the pedestrian or recreational use that's there right now. So we have made a few changes, trying to straighten some of that out and make our structures more accessible. But like I said, it's a little challenging to get equipment to some locations. We do fly some structures into extreme terrain, but again, the cost feasibility associated with that, we try to minimize it as much as we possibly can. So we do appreciate the cooperation of the Transportation Department and Forest Service and others that have been out there. And like I said, it's always been our intent. It's taken us a little longer to get back here to get that done, but we did want to update you, so, and we appreciate your patience.
What's your plan for revegetating the area?
We have the Forest Service has seeding specs that they've given us, so we'll use their one of their seeding recommendations. I think I actually have it on here.
You planting any new bushes, or
It'll mostly be grass.
and it'll be Forest Service grass like you see on the hillsides that is completely different than the grass that's growing in the surrounding area?
There's a little bit of natives in there. There's blue bunch and rough fescue, and on one of the seed mixes, Idaho.
Have any of your organizations used any special seed mixes out there? I know in the spring there were some things blooming, you know, that looked pretty good back in some areas that we were trying to avoid disturbing further as well. But I didn't know if you have. We'd like to know that, because we can match those blends.
I assume you want to maintain just maybe a short grass on the road. You don't wanna put bushes in the road, right, the Mullen Road?
Right,
You
right.
wanna try and maintain that for people who ride their bikes on it or, but yeah, it's mostly just grass seed.
You're gonna mulch it or,
No, not, some of it we will. Some of the steeper slopes, we're gonna put probably erosion control blanket on and seed under it, and then put the blanket on. But for the most part, we'll just broadcast seed to scarify it. And hopefully, you know, if we do it this fall, we'll have the moisture, and then next spring, hopefully, we'll get fairly good take on the seed.
Even though they sound the same, please don't plant mullein on the Mullen Road.
Okay.
I'm sure it's gonna come back anytime you disturb anything, it always seems to grow really good, so.
You know, I've worked in Missoula conservation just like for years. And, yep.
Anybody else have any questions or concerns?
I get, Roman brought up a good point. Is the machinery clean before it comes in?
Yep.
As part of our specifications, yeah, they have to wash it. And actually, that was part of the work process and has been our contractor's method of operation throughout the entire project. Because this was part of the segment from Waldorf to our Taft substation. There are crews and contractors working on Taft to Crow Creek that goes over the Taft Summit. And then the broader part of that is from Thompson Falls back to Kerr. So it's a pretty extensive project. But yeah, they all have those wash provisions. And like Sadie said, we monitor that for 2 years.
We,
So,
And then they, yeah, even on our line crews, you know, they go through across those lines. I don't know how often do they,
every 5 years is what
the veg guys go through there and they do weed control and, you know, cut the trees down if they're in the right of way. And then if somebody brings something to our attention, we usually, you know, try and get out there as soon as we can if there's an issue.
Do we have your contact information, should any follow-up questions occur, or,
Absolutely, we can
you
leave
know,
our
we haven't
card.
heard about maybe that day in
Yeah,
the
sure.
future?
And Steve Clausen is our community relations manager. He is here to introduce our new
Thank you.
Superior Town Manager.
Kevin knows everything.
And if anything happens, you call Kevin
Yeah.
24/7.
Weekends are
So why was the power out last night?
That was thanks to the osprey.
Oh, really?
The rain wets down their nest and then,
The rain wets down the sticks and then they track, the electricity tracks and it shorts out,
Yeah.
so.
Huh?
I know it was brought up and some concerns have been brought to me. We had a nest along the interstate out here. We got a rain a couple weeks ago, early in the morning. It was my first opportunity to get my truck in there and go up. We did have some burning on that pole. So if any questions arise on that, what happens in the summertime when it's really dry, those sticks will transmit a little bit of electricity, but not enough to short the line out. But what's happened, it'll track on that pole, and there was quite a bit of tracking. With that being an interstate crossing, there's quite a bit of safety value to that. So at the time, I did knock the nest down. What happened is the osprey, now they're into a practice mode, they call it, and they're not necessarily building a nest, but they haul sticks in. And late summer, they're kind of a pain in the butt because they put them everywhere, and they're great builders. But that's exactly what happened last night. Was some of the rebuilding, some of the practicing stuff, the sticks were on there.
so do you know, do the osprey gain superpowers from all the electricity? in there?
They can fly fast.
Some of them lose.
Yeah, they're not that super, are they?
But Kevin's job is one of my favorites, I think, that Northwestern Energy does, because we have experienced journeyman linemen that their experience troubleshoots those issues. as quickly as we possibly can. And it's great to have that resource in these communities, but it certainly helps us get that power back on as quickly as we possibly can. So those are critical. He's your guy.
And I've got a learning curve to add. Yeah, I've worked up here quite a bit, helping Hardbeck, over the last 5 years or whatever. So I'm pretty familiar with the area, but I've got a lot to learn, where some of our disconnects are and how I can isolate and get power back on quicker and stuff. So definitely it'll get better.
Well, I just want to say thanks for being
Yes.
responsive and willing to address everybody's concerns. Sometimes we have government agencies that kind of forget about the little counties and little people, so appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
We appreciate you.
Roman, can I,
You betcha.
I'm with the museum, and the only way we found out what you folks were doing down there is a lady that does walkabouts. And she called us wanting to know what in the world was going on. At no time did anyone contact the museum for historical content. And I think that should be a very important part of your project, is to know, is there something historical? Most of the time I say, no, go ahead. Like when they do the towers, I say, just paint it green, I don't care. But when you're dealing with the Mullen Road, which is a land-based road, something that we all relate to in this county, I think we should be at least asked about it.
Sure.
Because we didn't know anything about this project until this lady called. And then it was from there that we started trying to get answers. And I think it would be imperative that you ask us for the West End, where does the Mullen Road go?
Sure, and I own that faux pas. I was the one communicating with MDT and their historian. They asked to do the coordination on that communication early on, and I assumed, and I should never assume, that all of that was being coordinated. So, thank you for your comment. It's point well taken. Our objective for being here is to improve on that communication, so.
That was prior to the meeting we had last spring when we
Right.
talked about it.
And I think you make a good point. If you could provide us with a list of organizations that support that trail, a signage there in conjunction with MDT's, because that's where we started with MDT's historian, because of their markers that are out there. And so, we were relying on that coordination. That doesn't, at the end of the day, it's Northwestern Energy, it's our project. And so we want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to participate. So if you provide us with a list of organizations, the museum for sure, that support, because, we had Charles Mead's family had sold off those properties, and so we were working with the landowner, being the state, and it's outside of the highway jurisdiction, and I talked to multiple in their right-of-way, and their historian, John Axline, on our intents there, what we were doing there, the coordination and notification requirements, and then the reclamation. So I apologize that you didn't know ahead of that, and so, that was my oversight.
That's
We're
kind of
very, very concerned about the Mullen Road in this county.
Well, and Carol Johnson, I appreciate her bringing that
she's
to our attention,
fantastic.
because we were working with the Forest Service, and that's how we found out about the meeting. We had no knowledge that there were others concerned about not participating until that point in time, and so that's why Steve and Gary came out for that meeting.
That's kind of the same way that the Conservation Board got involved, because this individual that was walking out there, she didn't know who to contact, so she just kind of started contacting everybody at the same time.
Sure,
You know.
sure.
Yep.
One thing that I can't quite understand is this, the change in the weather out there happened over a period of time. And to me, being in the construction business for quite a few years, there was some blatant resource damage out there, and some of that could have been mitigated by just stopping, And that's what I don't quite understand. I mean, that happened over a period of a week or so, and it continued, and then nobody was made aware of what took place. So, to me, that's it's not real positive relation, you know?
Sure. And I understand that, and I guess talking to our foreman, and that, you know, it's not my job to defend, it's mine to make sure we're doing the right things for the right reasons. And so we had 3 crews and 3 foremen, and I spoke with all of them, and it made me feel good to hear that they were the ones that immediately reported. And they did contact us about the changing conditions, which are never static, and you're correct over time. And so our work on this project and this segment of line, there are a lot of contributing factors, and I'm not sure I'm the person qualified to explain all of that to you, but there were a lot of dynamics involved in the point of stop, because we schedule certain outages. This segment of line is very important to Missoula and others west of you, because it is virtually a radial line, which is not our strongest suit in the energy. And so we had to schedule work on those lines. Some of it was hot work that we don't like to do because that's a safety issue with our crews, but we do it so that we don't have to put people out of power while we do that work. So there were all those dynamics involved. So in that, a week is a pretty quick stop. But I know it doesn't look that way from the exterior. So I appreciate your comments. There was no malicious intent from what we gathered from our foreman. So, and I was glad that there were the ones that were reporting it. So.
But, you know, I mean, maybe people could have been made aware of the fact that this did take place, unfortunately. We want to let you know that it did take place, instead of people just finding out about it from the public or whatever.
Right. No,
and I appreciate your efforts now to mitigate things and bring it forward. I mean, that's really good.
But you're right, we were slow in communicating that.
I mean, John didn't know anything about it until we started letting him know about these things.
And I think we were slow in closing the loop on communication, because that went back through our internal, we'll pass your comments along to those who manage these projects. I definitely don't want to try to make excuses, and your points are well taken.
Thank you.
All right, any more questions or concerns, or?
Talking with you again.
Okay, so we have a request from the county attorney to have a resolution to request prosecutorial assistance, whereas the Mineral County attorney has requested assistance in the case of State versus Ronald Robert Haynes. Alan Donahue has a potential conflict of interest that may affect the perception of the case. It is desired and deemed appropriate that Ole Olson, the Assistant AG for the state of Montana, be permitted to assist in this. Whereas the state authorizes the county commissioner of any county, upon the consent of the county attorney and by agreement with the state of Montana, to contract in writing to employ an impartial and duly licensed attorney to perform criminal legal services for them. It is hereby resolved that Assistant AG General AG David Ole Olson is hereby appointed as Special Deputy County Attorney for Mineral County for the purpose of assisting in the prosecution of the aforementioned case, and that the said deputy can fulfill all functions set out in 44-4103. It is further resolved, witness fees and expenses, jury costs, and other normal costs associated with trial will be the county's responsibility, as with all other prosecution. I wonder how much they do they charge us being the state AG's office?
I'm not sure.
The resolution number is today's date. Kinda wish he was here to give us background on any questions you might have. Well, we've done it before, I guess, with
Yep.
Marcia because of
Yeah,
Conflicts.
potential
I
conflict.
did one with Sean.
Mhm.
Hopefully it's not a long one.
And I don't remember about the pay, but it would have to come out of her budget.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you want to call Ellen?
Anybody have any earth-shaking questions, or should we just?
No, I think we gotta do it, we gotta do
Yeah,
it.
she's
So,
requested it.
She's requested it. So I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 9-5-2017. Or
15.
915-2017.
I would second that motion.
All in favor of the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right.